Welcome to the Buy Box Bandits podcast.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Buy Box Bandits podcast. Today, we are joined by quite possibly the owner of the largest Amazon seller app screenshot on all of Amazon Twitter, my man Jonah FBA, former professional football player turned 8-figure Amazon seller. So thanks for joining us, man. Excited to chop it up on this stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Been listening to you guys since the beginning, so super excited to be here.
That's love.
Awesome.
You guys are crushing it.
Yeah, bro. I remember we met 2 years ago in June. You and I in June 2020. It was right when I was like just really starting to, figure things out, started getting that like 6-figure profit annualized range and everything like that. But obviously I know that it's not always been these big Amazon seller app screenshots, warehouse flexes, sitting on the boxes, pallet racks, all that kind of stuff, basically, man. So take us back to the beginning. How'd you learn about Amazon? How'd you get started?
Yeah, for sure. So for me with Amazon, I've been selling on Amazon since like 2010, and it was always just a side hustle back then. So that same account you guys see today actually started out as my mom's account. So I was like 15, 16 years old, just flipping anything I could with a barcode back then. So there was no Seller Amp, there was no Keepa, just the Seller Central app, and whatever I could get a hold of, I was reselling. Ended up going into like used textbooks. Back then I was selling a lot of used iPhones, which obviously like would never fly now, but we had like a junk drawer at our house, would sell a ton of used iPhones. And then from there, I was like sourcing on Craigslist for textbooks, iPhones, basically anything like super easy like that. But it was always just something on the side. So for me growing up, my goal was always to play in the NFL and play like professional football. So I knew I couldn't have like a real job growing up, right? But I knew that flipping products, I could always, make 20 bucks here, make 50 bucks there, but literally just a side hustle, nothing serious. Ended up playing football for a couple of years. And then once that came to an end, it was almost like perfect timing. So some of my best friends from high school were growing a wholesale business at the same time, but had no online presence at all. So that's kind of where I came in. I understood the Amazon aspect of it and would really help them just list products online, a lot of used stuff. And then COVID 2020 rolls around, and honestly, it's done from there. That took all of my attention. And from there, I really saw the opportunity, and we dove deep from there. And now it's all wholesale, basically 100%. And yeah, we do a lot of brand direct. So we quickly saw, if you've been in the space, you run into like the no Amazon sellers and all that, and shifted into like an agency services approach as well. So that's something where we're working directly with brands. And that's really where I see the space moving forward and where majority of my attention goes now. So kind of like a little overview, but starting out was just flipping, and now it's 100% wholesale.
So to give the listeners some context, give us an overview and a breakdown of sort of how your operation looks nowadays. Warehouse employees, obviously, VAs. Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so starting out, I was basically doing everything myself. So I was doing all the prepping, I was doing all the sourcing, probably had 50 to 100 ASINs that I was repricing myself. And it was my own fault, but part of that, I just wasn't in the online community at all. So once you really step into that, you learn so much too. It's like, oh, these guys are talking about keep a product finder. Maybe I should try that. And then you do it and see. So first thing I outsourced was prepping. So one of our first employees actually was somebody who would clean our house. And throughout 2020, she'd come over and clean the house, and she'd see me in the kitchen prepping products and shipping it out. And she needed more work. And that was actually our first employee. And she's still here almost 4 years later. So after her, we have 3 more now. So we have 4 people who are prepping and shipping basically all day in the warehouse. And then online, a team of, I believe we have 8 to 10 virtual assistants who are doing any admin work, all of our restocking. And yeah, from there, that's mainly the setup. We have a warehouse in Orange County. Me and my partners were able to run it remotely, but it took probably a year of hands-on training in the warehouse before that.
So what does your day-to-day look like with all that help? you're not touching products. You're probably not even sourcing new wholesale leads and accounts. So what does your day look like?
Yeah, my day looks like a lot of overseeing and managing our team. So I handle all of the virtual assistants, all of our tasks. But even further than that, it's like overseeing our finalized purchase orders. So how we set it up in our business is we have a sourcing team who basically will go through and shout out to Miles with Seller Amp. They'll go through and export everything, just like a raw data export, because you guys see how much it takes to really source through a wholesale account deeply. So we have a team that will go through and data scrape everything, and then a team who will put together just a proposed purchase order, just a proposal. So a lot of what I do now is going through the proposals, tightening up our product research team, and just seeing new opportunities as well.
Yeah, big time. And so your day-to-day is completely different than a couple years ago when you were packaging stuff up in the kitchen right there. And that's, I think, a really hard thing for people when they're getting going, is that they're like, dude, I'm doing retail arbitrage. I'm driving around all these stores. I can't be doing this for 10 and 20 years. Good. You're not going to have to if you do put in that initial work right there. And you're going to be able to build more leverage like you've been able to do. To get some context around how the operation's grown, would you mind walking through like year by year since 2020? We got the warehouse here. We did XYZ amount here, just so we can see the progression.
Yeah, so in 2020, basically we wanted to keep overhead low. So everything was out of the house, didn't really have any employees. And pretty quickly we got to like 50K months. Like I think we had ended 2020 right around $1 million in revenue, or 2020 and $1 million in revenue. And 2021 was around 4 million. By then we also had a warehouse we were using, I think 1 or 2 employees. And then 2022, we did 7.3 million, I believe. And this year, hopefully we can hit the 8-figure mark. But as we progressed, we would normally add 1 or 2 more bodies to the equation. On the online side of things, I was like obsessed with virtual assistants starting out. Like once I realized just the leverage you can have with them and the output. So I started hiring way too many. So then there's people who just have no idea what to do. I'm not guiding them well. So I ended up cutting back down on the virtual team.
A bit more tactically, how are you going about, whether it be constructing brand lead list or distribution and supplier leads list, how are you constructing like who you're outreaching to and how go about that?
Yeah, so we use Smart Scout a ton for this. So we're at the point now we have our niches that we know really well. Once you start selling in a niche for a year, you know the competitor sellers, you know the brands. So when we're doing outreach, we're well vetted leads that we're contacting. So our open rate's a lot higher than it used to be. But yeah, Smart Scout has been great for that. But also, like you guys know, you don't need a ton of suppliers after a while. So I think there's a misconception that you need 100, 200 suppliers. Like you might have to contact that many at the beginning, but you can run a really healthy business on 2 to 3 suppliers.
And so if you were to paint a picture in terms of what you deem as a perfect brand, in terms of maybe competition, velocity, price point, what is that, or overall revenue? Obviously Smart Scout has like quantifiably how much a brand does across all listings. What does it look like for you in terms of your ideal brand lead?
Yeah, so for brand leads, that really depends on where we are at as a company and where you're at. So for me, I'm not going to contact a brand that's doing like $2,000 to $3,000 a month, just because I know it's going to take a lot of time and bandwidth to really grow that brand. But the chances of opening a brand like that are going to be a lot higher than going straight for a 500K monthly rev brand. But for us right now, we do like, decent amount of volume. So I'd say at least 50,000 monthly revenue. But more importantly, a brand where there's, maybe 5 to 10 other sellers, and we think we can fit in on that brand. So we'll fit in, sell for a while, but ultimately somebody where we can work directly with long-term. So I'm not going to work direct with Dove, I'm not going to work direct with Lysol. There's no chance of it. But if I can contact somebody and actually provide value and grow their revenue a little bit, that's somebody we're really interested in.
Absolutely. And then in terms of differentiating the two, basically the types of wholesale suppliers, right? Whether it be brand direct or like distributors, do you mind breaking that down and talking about why you prefer the brand direct route, because we have a lot of wholesale sellers on here. A lot of them prefer distributors, especially for beginners. So I'd love to hear your take in terms of differentiating the two and then breaking that down.
Yeah, I think for beginners, the distribution route definitely is better. So it's just lower barrier of entry. You don't have to sort of have that sale pitch or like try to sell someone on why to work with you. I like brand direct just because it's longer lasting. So that doesn't mean we're only brand direct. We definitely do a ton of distributor where we're just placing big bulk orders of stuff that's going to move quick and it's slightly lower margin than that direct. But for how we're preparing our pitch and like talking to people in person, I like those brand directs because I know I can provide value. So it is a mix of both.
And then at a very macro level, what are some of the value adds you can provide from a brand perspective?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why we like to sell on a listing a little bit before you go and start offering them all these things, because number one, when you sell on a brand long enough, you start to see the landscape of that brand. You know, if I could get rid of 5 other sellers and we could sell at map, it's better for everybody. So some of the value adds we'll offer are obviously just map protection. That's something where it's mostly just a saying to brands. Like I can say I'm going to protect your map, but who knows? Somebody gets the product and hops on the listing. There's not much I can do. But a few other things we offer now, one of our big value adds is we're creating listings and optimizing listings. So I just looked earlier, we have 13 brands in the brand registry program. And what we do is we see a brand that's selling well, and let's say they only have individual listings. It's one of the easiest ads you can offer is, hey, I'll create a bundle, I'll create a multi-pack. And that's not necessarily something where I have to create my own product and put it in there. It's just that, hey, you guys have these 2 products and we see that they're frequently bought together, so we can create a listing for you guys. And for brands and suppliers, they're a lot more open to working with you if you are telling them you're going to create listings, create the demand, right? Instead of just another leech that's hopping on.
Yeah. So when you create a bundle, like create a new listing, I'm actually kind of curious this as well. Is there a way you could set it up where you're the only seller for that? Or is it typically the kind of thing where you create the listing for them and then other people are welcome on that listing too? Or is there a choice? And I kind of know the answer, but I'm also just asking for the audience.
Yeah, it is kind of complex. So we started out, we wanted to do the branded bundles, but we didn't really have a product that we could provide to the market. So we just started with like microfiber towels, right? So we'll do like a towel in it. And pretty quickly we saw other people can join the listing too. So I think long-term, the play is for branded bundles to really like manufacture or bring something to the table that's useful to the customer. But for now, what we'll do is we'll create the listing and try to have exclusivity maybe from one product of the distributor or brand we're working with, just to try to keep everyone off the listing.
So Miles and I talk to a lot of sellers who are OA looking to transition into wholesale, and we get a lot of negative feedback in terms of, oh, I called 5, I called 10, and I haven't had any success. This doesn't work. Or I called 50 and I haven't had any success. Have you followed up? Have you called them? Right? These sorts of questions.
And it's never yes. It's never yes to doing the shit that's actually
in terms of the OA seller that's transitioning into wholesale. To put it into perspective, if you had to quantify like the conversion, right? If you call 100, if you reach out to 100, what should they expect in terms of opening those accounts from a distribution perspective?
So for opening accounts, obviously it is a volume game starting out if you just have 0 connections, right? But one thing I always tell people is look into those relationships you already have and look into local relationships, because you going and showing up in person is 100% better than sending 100, maybe 500 emails, showing up to like 5 people, you know, because at that point they see a face, you can build the relationship. But I honestly think outreach is only one part that everyone focuses on as a big hurdle here, where I work with people and they open accounts and they don't know how to fully source an account either, right? So you might open accounts and have some winning products in there. It just might not be the sexiest buy at first. So maybe you go ahead and place that 15% ROI order in hopes that next time you can get a discount, or next time you can add more products to the PO. So one thing is the outreach, but another is just fully sourcing through the accounts you are opening and working with.
Yeah, and keeping the long-term mindset with all that. So one thing I really liked, your former athlete, same thing with myself, same thing with Garrett. We all like that kind of stuff. It definitely translates really, really well. The consistency, the focus necessary to succeed with sports as well. One thing I really like is that you do with your boys, basically, right? And I'm lucky enough to do with my boys as well, right? And a lot of people don't take the necessary actions to do that. So can you talk about how, just making friends in the space or getting into the space with friends has been really helpful for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just the athlete perspective too, and mindset, it's always better when you're working with a team on something. So I really love that you guys have built that community aspect. You're all working on your own businesses. That was something where me and my boys, we were networking, working together, but on our own business. So it's really cool to see, because once you're networking in the space, number one, you're going to learn so much from each other. And I know it's that hurdle of putting yourself out there, getting started, but even starting a business, right? If you have somebody that's just as invested as you start something with a friend and go from there. And if they're not sticking around or providing value, you can always shift. But I do think people have that fear mindset of getting started by themselves. And obviously you guys have crushed it with the online community. Just the amount of reach you have in this space is insane. So if you're not tapping into that, it's going to be really hard to get started.
Yeah, but your Twitter audience is you got a big following on Twitter as well.
And you've been around for a while, so people know you. You know what I mean? You get the compounding effect similar to us and everything, but you just people listening got to go through that process of tweeting to no one to be able to tweet to somebody. But how has that been getting on Twitter the past couple of years? Because you clearly stuck with it, so you see value in it.
Yeah, I see a ton of value in it. I think personal brand for me will be something I want to develop like 100% fully down the road. But like you guys know, it's so hard to give personal brand 100% while another business 100% and all that. So it is a fine line of where I want to put my time. I saw Scott Needham say something where it's like, it's hard to grow your business if you're spending time coaching everyone else's. And I kind of took that into perspective as well, because I love the education space. I love online, the personal brand and everything it's bringing, but I'm not done growing the Amazon business fully. And at the scale we're at, it does take a lot of time. So, a quick shout out to you, Miles, too, because I think you were one of the first people I connected with when I came here. I had like 200 followers, anonymous account, but one of my first screenshots I posted was like 150K rev month or something.
There
like
we
that.
go. Yeah, but yeah. You were the person that deserved follow. So it was easy, right? It's easy to see results because you had already done the prerequisite work. So there's like two routes, right? You can already be the man, or you can document becoming the man, basically. Yeah. And luckily, everyone has the opportunity to do either of those or both as well. Mm-hmm.
And that's what's funny too. It's like you don't get too distracted online, because even for myself, I was already doing good numbers, and then I come online and I'm seeing how people are posting content. Maybe I need to post content that way, right? But what works for somebody else might not work for you. And that's one of those things where when you're building and documenting your process, don't focus too much on the documenting if you haven't done anything yet, right? So you always want to be growing on offline, and just showing people what you're doing online, I think, is the best way to grow.
So I think looking back to your sort of Amazon journey, I think it resembles, obviously not at the scale, but the path resembles a lot of people that are listening to this episode, being that you started part-time, right, at a smaller scale and built it up to the point that it's at now. What do you attribute some of the biggest differences from this Amazon business at a smaller part-time scale to a full-time scale, and sort of how can that mindset shift for the people that are looking to take it full-time?
Yeah, I'd say just mindset in terms of where you're putting your time and energy. So for me, it was one of those side hustle things that I'd flip on the side for maybe 7 or 8 years before I really went full time with it. And then obviously, in 6 months, you do more than you did in the first 8 years. So understanding where you want to go with the business Is this something where you're looking to make an extra $500,000 a month? Or is this something where you want complete time and location freedom and you really want to scale your business to the moon? So just understanding where you want to take it at first, and then just the necessary steps to get there.
Yeah, where are you right now? Because you got a nice jungle vibe in the background there with the YouTube viewers.
Yeah, I'm at my grandpa's house actually. So I have a young kid, another on the way. I have a crazy dog. So like any type of recording, anything like that, I'm like, I gotta go.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And then because have you always been a California native? And am I wrong in saying you've done some traveling too? Am I tripping on that?
No, yeah, I travel a good amount. I'm a California native. It was one of those things for me growing up. And I probably can attribute a decent amount of this to football, but never having a real job, I always wanted to have that location freedom. So I was really obsessed with the digital nomad, making money from anywhere. And, I've traveled over the years, but being able to do it now and still work on your business is probably the best part of running an Amazon business.
Kind of taking it back to a more like tactical wholesale level, when someone at first gets, whether it be a brand or distribution catalog, and the prices don't necessarily meet your buying criteria, but they're close enough, what's your kind of mindset and strategy regarding that? Are you trying to negotiate better pricing off the bat? Are you placing an order, even though it doesn't meet your criteria, but expecting it to get a little better over time? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I think understanding where you're at in your business. So for me right now, where we're at, I'm probably not going to place an order that doesn't meet our criteria just because I don't need it. But if I'm getting started and maybe I, in my head, I need a 25, 30% ROI, and this supplier I'm working with is at a 15, like I said, I would go ahead and place the order. I think it's one of those things where if you're going to hammer a discount and you haven't spent any money with the guy yet, it's going to be a lot harder, especially from the sales rep perspective. So, ease into your sales rep, give them a couple orders, and then you'll see if it's worth replacing an order or not.
Yeah, another thing that a lot of people are wondering is like, okay, when do I get into wholesale, right? And I think a lot of people think like, if you want to start doing wholesale, you have to just cold turkey cut off OA. That is absolutely not true, right? You guys love the 1,000 ASINs episode. If you haven't already, listen to that. That's one of our most valuable ones. He's doing over $1 million a month and still does a lot of OA, as well as his wholesale business. So how do you see integrating wholesale into an existing arbitrage business for, I'm sure you get a lot of DMs about it and such.
Yeah. So I always say that you don't have to necessarily cut off OA or cut off what's been working for you up to this point. Just think about maybe expanding your mindset and vision into understanding and learning about wholesale and taking advantage of opportunities as they arise, right? So if you're an arbitrage seller and you've been doing it for a while, think about those products you're selling. Obviously not like a Nike or Adidas, but there's a lot of products where I'll see an arbitrage opportunity and then reverse source, see who the distributors are, see who the brand is. And I think if you start adding that into your daily regimen as an OA seller, eventually you're going to find, you're going to stumble across a wholesale account without even really trying. So I wouldn't say you have to put everything down and make 100 calls, but maybe a few calls here and there and just expanding.
Yeah, bro. And it's the same thing. Cause like a lot of people are like, should I do FBA or FBM? It's like, no, do both. Yeah. Right. It's like, should I do RAO? It's like, do both. Right. The nice thing is that we have all this flexibility and choice right here. And then how do you see local suppliers fitting in? Do you think that's mainly something you guys have been able to utilize because you're, in a good location in Cali? Or do you think a lot of people within like a couple hours of a major metro are going to be able to do stuff like that?
No, yeah, I think anyone with a mom and pop type of shop in their location could come at it with this approach because they have the products, they have the access to the suppliers. It is 100% how you want to shape that relationship with your retailer. I work with 2 retailers right now and they both operate differently. So for one retailer, I will buy and resell on their account. And for another retailer, I just buy through them and sell on our account. So it depends on each person. It could be a commission. It could be a profit share. I prefer to just buy at wholesale price and resell. So something you can agree on. But even if you are rural, living in the middle of nowhere, use somebody by your prep center, right? So we're in California. We also have a New Jersey prep center. So I can call people in New Jersey, and I might not personally be there, but we have a facility that's down the road that we can schedule pickups. And just right there, you know, it's not local, but it's local enough to something I can connect to.
Looking back at your I guess 10 years with selling on Amazon, what are some of the the biggest growth catalysts, if you will, that have contributed to your growth spurt? And also on the other side, what are some the biggest mistakes that may have hindered even further growth?
Yeah, so biggest growth catalyst for us, number one for me personally, was going into this business with friends. Like I said, I'd always done it on my own for a while. Didn't put anywhere near as much attention to it as I do now with growing it with partners. Another one is just leverage. So leveraging prep team to prep products for us, like that alone. I just love going through and seeing how many units are shipped out, and I didn't have to touch them, right? Because there was a time where every single unit that goes out was me. And even if somebody wanted to help, I probably would have been like, no, like you're not going to do it right. You have to prep it, all that. So understanding that you could do something 100% by yourself, or maybe you outsource it and it's done at an 80% level. My day-to-day job now is like fine tuning that 20%. And then biggest hinders for us, I'd say, can also be going too fast. So when you're going too fast and purchasing products, where this is a big cash flow intensive business, right? So for us, we take loans if we have opportunities to do so. But there have been times where we take loans and then we're kind of sitting on the money. We can't even deploy it fast enough. And I think that's something in the space. Everyone gets obsessed with credit and loans, but you have to be very cautious when going that route. And honestly, starting out, it's not necessary at all.
So that's actually a really, really good point. And we'll transition to, I mean, a lot of people that Miles and I talk to on the daily basis either have a loan available or are actively looking for extra money, extra loans, that sort of thing. What are some of the things that the listener should take into consideration when looking at a loan, right? What are some of the interest rates are too high, too low? What's a good amount of money that they need? What are some of the guidelines that you've used?
Yeah, so starting out, I always say first tap into your own capital, right? Like if you're going to make a mistake, you want to use your own money. You don't want to use somebody else's money for that. So after that, go into no interest credit cards, max that out as you can. And before you do any outside loans like Amazon lending, one thing that we did that really helped was tapping into like your existing network of family and friends. So we took loans from aunts and uncles, just an agreed upon rate. And I personally really like that method first, if you can, before you go and start working at Amazon lending and stuff like that.
Got you.
Then-
You got it. Yeah.
I was gonna say, what is an ideal rate from Amazon?
From Amazon, so we were just looking at one. We took one last year for 500K, almost paid off. And there's one right now for like 1.34. And the interest on it was basically is 12 months, 7%. So it was like,
that's low as shit.
Yeah,
I guess they do. Yeah, that's got to be, it's the amount. It's got to be the amount.
Because the interest cost too. So like APR, it's 12.99%.
Okay. That
APR is 12.99, but the interest cost on the loan for 12 months is 7%. So it's like 1.34, you pay back like 95K on it or something.
Yeah, ideally you move that like 6 times or whatever. You see, it's like you arbitrage the hell out of it.
And the best part with Amazon lending, at least up to this point, is that they're holding all this money from you anyways. So a lot of the times the payback, you're not paying them, they're just withholding it from your disbursements. So it is kind of it helps with the cash flow.
Sure. That makes sense. So what do you see as the path forward? Because hearing you talk about some of the technicalities, creating listings, PPC, stuff like that, I'm thinking, why don't you just create your own private label, right? So is that in the works, or do you think it's more on the brand management, like partnering up with brands side of things that you see the future for you guys?
Yeah, we've dabbled in the PL space, but it was one of those things where I tried to outsource the full project and obviously did not go as planned. Like I only spent a couple grand on it, but for now, how we are looking at Amazon is I really like the listing creation and all that, but for partnered brands, because it's already in-demand stuff. So it's a lot easier with the PPC aspect to plug in the keywords of a brand that people are already searching. And like I said, if you have a listing that's doing 500 sales a month and you have no bundle, I know that maybe I could get 50 sales a month on a bundle listing, So private label, maybe one day down the road, like when we really have a product we're proud of and believe in. But for now, I think more of the brand registry
Cool.
side.
Yeah, and either way though, you're still learning, you're still acquiring capital, meeting people. Like it's going to be there if you ever wanted it. And I feel like that definitely, could make sense. The downline as you discussed right there. So for the arbitrage sellers in Buy Box Bandits Nation that are listening, want to get into wholesale, or people still on the sidelines want to get into wholesale, that kind of thing. What are some action tips and just steps they should be taking to look into getting accounts the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, number one is get a reseller's permit if you don't have one already. And like I said, I would tap into a local network. Google's still the best tool out there by far. Everyone sees it. Just search distributor, beauty, Miami, near me, and look on Google Maps and call all of them or pull up in person and show face. And as you're doing so, don't come across as an Amazon seller, right? Don't say, hey, can I sell your stuff on Amazon? How we project ourselves to suppliers is we are an e-commerce online retailer and distributor. Because if you add distributor into the mix, you already seem larger rather than if it's just you or not. Like just saying you're a distributor is going to get a lot more, a better response than an Amazon seller.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Will you be at ASD in a couple weeks?
No, so I went in February.
That I knew. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a baby in a couple weeks, so I'm
That's a decent excuse.
Yeah, he'll be pretty active.
As long as it's yeah, that I got you. That makes sense. Right, you got to teach him to source pretty quick though with that bone.
Got it early for sure.
Yeah, definitely, man. And where can people find you on Twitter or just social media in general?
Yeah, just Jonah _FBA.
Cool. All right. Well, we appreciate it, man. Thanks for, all the support and just the help over the years too with everything. Make sure you guys follow Jonah. You'll see some incredibly and growing seller app screenshots and such like that. But we really appreciate it, man. And thanks to everyone for listening as well.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks,
cool. Sweet. Have a good one, everyone.